All right, so welcome everyone to section 3 for the SLAM program that we're doing together. How did everyone like it? Yes, no, better, worse than the previous sections? This one was about the actual listing appointment itself as a follow-up to the pre-listing package that we did, section 2. What were some people's thoughts?
I thought it was really informative, actually. I found a lot of insightful information in there that maybe I wouldn't have thought of otherwise.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I thought it was more like action oriented. So, now we're getting out there and, getting our groove. So I like that this section a lot better.
yeah,
I liked it, but I was also wanting more. Like rather than some of it was detailed, but like for instance, when he was talking about objectives and he was talking about Zillow. Well, what they didn't tell us is the answer. He talked about, and they did that frequently. They would identify areas, but then they didn't tell you how to handle the Zillow or how to handle those certain things. So I was a little disappointed in that I was hoping that they would give a little bit more, the answers. They did on some, but not on everything. So
right. Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, there's definitely is more content to be consumed, like more training involved, especially when it comes to the objection handling.
yeah, exactly.
Get to.
Like
But
the
yeah,
idea of the grid. I like the idea of the grid. We all do those things, but I mean, I like the idea of actually making that concrete, the grid with the objections and
yeah,
yeah.
the spreadsheet there. But yeah, so I'll share the screen so we can start going through it and just to help guide our discussion here. So this was the section 3. This first section here with building rapport and previewing the home. It seemed to have some of the same content as the pre-listing, just on how to present yourself, dress a little bit nicer than the clients, make sure you have good hygiene, things like that, just be very intentional with how you carry yourself and how you interact with the clients. But then, they had the actual process of the preview where you show up, you're supposed to sit down with them at the table, kind of go over things a few minutes with them, set some expectations for how the entire appointment's going to go, and then you ask them to lead you on a tour of the house and sell you the house as they show you around, which I thought that was actually a really useful thing to keep in mind, when you're seeing a house for the first time, rather than you just meandering about, taking a look around, asking the sellers to kind of be the ones to present the home to you. That to me seemed like a worthwhile request to put on the sellers, and something that isn't too difficult for me personally to make that ask when I'm there. What were others' thoughts on that? Yeah.
I like how he went through he gave you like a blueprint of the flow of the whole appointment.
Yeah.
So starting with the preview of the home and try to make them sell you their house, I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, pretend you're trying to sell the home to me while showing me around. Like that's an easy statement to put out there, because it's your first time going through the home ostensibly. And so it's like, okay, yeah, then while they're doing that, yeah, you're going to be going around taking notes based on what they're saying because they know their home better than anyone else. They should be able to know the features that are worth highlighting. Now, obviously, you then as a professional are going to take their presentation in that tour and pick from it the most useful pieces that you then want to incorporate into your marketing of the home later on. But I mean, it's a great way to glean that information from the sellers. Rather than when you're doing it at the table and you just say like, oh, what sorts of things do you like about the home? It's a little bit easier, I think, to have it be part of them showing you around, highlighting those aspects. The disc assessment, did people read that and find that useful? Was it just kind of, nah? Any,
I read it, I'm familiar with that kind of stuff, just in general, the psycho, whatever. And I didn't, but I don't know, I go kind of just on intuition, and it's just, age and experience and all that stuff, and I can kind of read people pretty well. I don't know that I would go in depth as far as the disc, the drive, influence, steadiness, compliance stuff, but it's good to hear, but I don't, for me personally, I don't think I would go through the time, I guess, and analyze it that much. I don't think I'd make it that that important of a deal. Obviously, you want to read them and you want to get them to communicate, but
yeah,
I personally, through the years with other experiences as well as while I've been at Remax, there's been many presentations about this in different ways, but they're all kind of the same thing as reading people, body language, a whole cumulative. I could use this. I mean, I'm mindful of it. The problem is I get going and I don't use it. So I need to find a way to slow down and remember this, because I believe it's important to figure out who you're communicating with and communicate in their style and that whole piece. Unfortunately, I have the head knowledge, but I don't actually put it in practice. I get going and I just.
Yeah.
So it was a good reminder.
yeah.
Has anybody got any hints on how they actually use it, or how they make themselves use it? So that,
I mean, I think just taking the intentional step to think about your clients in that regard of, okay, you know what? Yes, I am dealing with someone. I mean, the most obvious one to me of the four is the C, the compliance one, which is very much the engineer analytical type. I've often had those clients that are just so meticulous and they want to go over every detail, and it's like, okay, yes, they're the ones that it's most easy to recognize this is the type of person I'm dealing with. So therefore I need to adjust my approach a little bit. I'm not just going to skip over the boilerplate text in the purchase agreement. I am going to know to go section by section and have something to say about it. Because I have already gotten the sense that, okay, they're the engineer type that's going to want that information. But just also being aware of the other three types, and then trying to just, okay, yeah, this is someone who is just a cooperative team player type, that the steadiness, and they're going to be very understanding. So yeah, that's good to know. Or the type that's more like the influence, where they're going to be very trusting of you. And so then, if you recognize that they're the type that is going to trust you, be very cognizant not to abuse that trust, because they, if it was an engineer type who may be more likely to speak up for what they want, and and really make it clear, if they're the type to just kind of rely on you, then it is a little bit more on you to fight for their best interest, because they may not be doing so on their own. So that was my takeaway, is just to have that awareness when I'm interacting with my clients, and just try to think, okay, if this is the personality type of this client, what, just little things can I be doing slightly different to make sure that I'm giving them the best service for their personality type.
so, just not to belabor it, but maybe the group could share with me how they do this, because I'm always perplexed. like you're going through a listing agreement or purchase agreement, either one, you're going through documents. You only have so long on this appointment. You don't want it to labor on. So do you paraphrase? You say, section 1 is this, and you'll want to verify your address. Do you paraphrase each one, or do you actually read through it with them for people who've never understood a contract or new buyers? How do you approach it, and how much time do you labor on that? Anyone?
Yeah, actually with me, I actually ask the client. I'll give them the option of going, reading the whole document, or if they would like it, the shorter version, basically, of what it is. And again, I think it even teaches us in SLAM to leave the documentation with them if we have that opportunity for them to review it, before signing. So that's how I do it.
Well, that's how I do it too, and I just wondered if it's because some will want me to read it, and then I've used up. I mean, it's you read it, then you explain it, and it can be a lot of time and a
Yeah.
lot of it can be
But if that
exhausting.
gives them comfort, it's probably
Okay.
worth our time.
All right.
Yeah, and actually, I asked Rob about this earlier in the week, that you have this appointment and do you bring all the stuff there and go through it? Or, kind of a high level approach, because you don't want to, the answer is you don't want to overwhelm them.
Right, exactly.
And, so what I would do is just, this is this form, this is what it's for, you're going to receive this electronically, you can read through it, ask me any questions, I'm always around, that kind of thing.
Right.
So you send it ahead of time then, guys, out to them, like the listing agreement?
Not ahead of time, but I leave it with them if they want. They can preview it, but not ahead of time, not before the appointment.
Okay.
What I really, I try to observe the closers, at a closing, because they have to get through a whole bunch more
Right.
documents than we do.
That's
And-
why I'm asking. They do it.
And so and every so often, one of my clients will, stop and ask questions about a document. So they need to have both and we need to have both the 3-second statement about, the document, the 30-second statement about the document, and the 3-minute, actual very detailed review of the document. You start personally, you need to know the 3-minute, thoroughness of it all. But then, make sure you can boil it down to 30 seconds if, they did have to, okay, what is this specific section here about the closing costs? If you just skim over it and mention something in passing, but they want a little bit more detail, you should be able to elaborate a little bit and, without reading it word for word. Because if you do that, it undermines your expertise a little bit because they could read it themselves, but they want to have you help digest it in an understandable way.
Right.
But yeah, I typically start out with like the 3-second. Okay, so this part here is just mentioning all of the fixtures that are included with the property. And then we are going to also write in the appliances, and then going down here to the inspections. You're going to have 8 days to do your inspections, and then 2 days to decide if you're. So just the quick overview. If they have questions, then you can elaborate further. And if they really want to know every specific detail, you can go through it with them. That's just my general approach.
Okay. I was just curious on everyone's approach on that, because
Yeah. All right, well, let's get back to sharing the screen. And we can so this presenting the marketing system, the statement that in their script that I thought was most useful was, our goal is to ensure your home gets seen by every single buyer who might possibly be a good prospect, and every single agent who might possibly have a buyer who could be interested. That is a good distillation of what our responsibility is when it comes to marketing and getting the exposure for their listing out in front of, yes, every single buyer who could possibly have interest in it, and then as many agents as possible who could have buyers for it. So just being able to take their script and kind of understand what it means. What is it that we're trying to communicate to the clients when it comes to marketing? You know, what is our actual responsibility? It's, you know, I always tell my potential clients, yeah, my job is to get it in front of as many people as possible, and in doing so, make sure it creates the best first impression that I can with regard to photos and the remarks, the things that I actually have some influence over. You know, us like getting it in front of people and making it attractive to where then they want to see it in person. That's my job as a listing agent when it comes to marketing. And so now I personally thought their scripts kind of leaned into denigrating other agents a bit much, just by saying like, oh, many agents just, you know, put it on the MLS. I don't think that that's a good look in theory, to put down our fellow, you know, realtors. And I mean, it depends on your style. I think that can be a little bit of a turn off to be negative against others. I just would rather simply lean into what I view as my strengths. And I say that, yes, I really take pride in my listing remarks. I think that is something that can make a big difference. So it's not just this generic whatever. So I'm not mentioning other agents, you know, directly. I'm just kind of saying the standard is one thing. I then try to go above and beyond that in this regard. What was everyone else's thought on this part of the section? Because then they also had that where you present the open house system and you present the call capture IVR system. I'm not the type to, like, I mention open houses and all that, but I personally don't think I would incorporate into my business a long spiel about open houses. I can talk for a couple minutes about the pros and cons, and you know, based on my own opinion, I think in this case the right open house strategy is this. I don't think it's something that is worth puffing up too much, because then you kind of set expectations like the open house may be more important than it often is. And then if you set that expectation and you do the open house and it doesn't provide much value, you know, I don't like to set expectations that I'm not able to achieve.
I tend to put more emphasis, I mean, not more emphasis, I tend to put emphasis on open houses myself personally. Because actually I've sold many open houses. Surprisingly, because it surprises me even that I have, in the last, because I track how my sales come, you know, and I'm surprised at how many clients I've either received, but importantly, like over those co-ops, the last 5 co-ops that were sold over there, I sold 3 of them on an open house. So, but I tend to talk about a way immediately, because I hold one right away, a way to immediately gather feedback, credible feedback. And because I have a survey that I have people fill out and all that stuff when they come into my open houses, and I'm able to give feedback that way. So I do tend to put more emphasis on not more emphasis, but put an emphasis on an open house. I don't know how what others' experience have been, but how anybody else feels about that.
I think that I agree that open houses are very important. I don't really expand on it. It's kind of a, you know, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to hit the market, and when we hit the market, that's the big thing. And this is why this is why you are using a realtor, because we can access the MLS, and in a click of a button, it goes out to Zillow, Trulia Homes, Realtor.com, all these other networks. Which a FSBO obviously does not have that kind of power. And I just, so I hype up, the big, the first 2 weeks, that it's a big deal. I was surprised, and sorry, Jordan, I don't want to go ahead, but I was surprised in, well, it's in the next couple sections. He said the golden time was the first 6 to 8 or 7 to 8 months. I'm like, months? I'm thinking like weeks.
Yeah.
So, but I
Even
just,
even days a couple of years ago.
well, right. So, but
That's
yeah,
the
I
problem
do,
with
because there
making-
are some agents, but I wouldn't frame it this way, but I know some agents just don't believe in open houses. I think open houses are critical. So I do tell them that.
Well, I know some people think of it, I did too initially for a long time, think of it as a way to gather new agents, gather buyers, or we can gather buyers. It's more for us than them. But honestly, I have found that to be different, because I actually am serious about, I mean, like I say, I have a survey and I give people raffle tickets if they fill out the survey, a scratch off, and I tell them, I promise I will not bug them, but I will give that information back to my, and it's a survey about, their experience at that house. And, so I embrace them actually. But anyway, but that was just, so I would include it on my slide, but I wouldn't like it, make it any more important than any, because every facet is an important facet of selling.
Right.
Does anyone intend to do like the call capture type stuff? That this course, the videos and all that, I mean, it is clearly not a modern, at least, with regard to what he was talking about in terms of, listing length and all of that. It seems like it was probably about 7 years ago that, some of this content was created. And at the time, the call capture, that was kind of cutting edge. But the current market, it is a little bit different. And nowadays, most buyers are savvy enough to know how to not need a call capture if they're driving down the street and they see a house, rather than calling a number on a sign, and they can pull up something on their phone pretty quickly. They have an app that will get them the info they're looking for. But yeah, well, let's move on then to the next section.
Well, one thing though, in reverse of that, something is associated with that differently now, is like our Max Text, we get hits all the time, like this person will, we get leads through Lead Street, now through the other system. So that's, when people inquire, so even though they're not doing call capture, we're able to track inquiries. Can't always follow, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People hit and we'll say that we had this many people visit, and we're, wanting more information.
Yeah. Well, yeah, all right. So the determining the state of your market and pricing it right. This here, they discuss, okay, whether it's a seller's market, if there's under 4 months of inventory, a balanced market at like 4 to 5, or a buyer's market of 6 or more. We have not had enough inventory to qualify for a buyer's market for many years. But now, did anyone actually, because they mentioned how to create or to identify the absorption rate. Did anyone, take the step of actually trying to think, okay, yeah, what is the absorption rate in my market right now, and find that out? If not, oh, you
I
did.
did not,
Oh, you did not.
because the board, Ann Arbor board, provides those statistics to us.
Oh, aha. Well, I wanted to show real quick how to do it on our real comp board, at least for like Livingston County. Because it turned out to actually be a very simple number, which was nice. So pulling the last 365 days worth in Livingston County, you get 2,402. So 2,402 divided by 12 is basically 200 sales a month. And so then if that's the monthly absorption rate is 200, if we wanted to figure out, okay, what is the current number that are in theory homes that you could show to clients? So the coming soon, active, contingent, or ABO, anything that you could set up showings on, there's 335. So 335 divided by 200 is, a month and 1.6 months or so. And so, under 2 months of inventory, going based on the absorption rate. And so, and that is pretty common. I mean, I think, during the summer market, it's probably even less than, 1 month potentially of inventory because everything goes pending so quickly. So regardless, we are still solidly in a seller's market based on the industry standard of looking at, anything under 4 months. So I just wanted to point that out as a worthwhile takeaway from this determining the state of your market and then pricing it right, because if it's lower inventory and you have a range in which you think the house can fall, you can get away with going a little bit higher in that range when the market is what it is right now, which leverage for the sellers.
Jordan, can I interrupt?
Yeah,
Do you mind if we have a little bit deeper conversation about absorption rates?
yeah.
I find the math to not work out well when you're coming from a market that has had low inventory for as long as we have, because population hasn't decreased, right? The need for housing has actually gone up, but yet we're using an absorption rate based on the number of sales during a market that has had historically low inventory. So I feel like absorption rates, I mean, take this as you will, and maybe this can help you look like an expert compared to other realtors who want to use absorption rates, and you can speak to it, but also say, like, I mean, when you're dividing a low number by a high number because they're still going to sell as quick as they used to, you get the numbers go off. I'd rather use, the past 5 to 10 years average of homes for sale versus the past year, because I feel like you get a more accurate, it's the law of large numbers, right? Like you get a more accurate understanding of how it would work out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, what I think the point, what you're making me realize is, yes, in Livingston County, there was 2,400 sales in the last year. That was actually artificially low because
Yes, that's what I
market
mean.
would have clearly had a whole bunch more sales if more listings would have occurred.
Right.
So the 2,400 doesn't actually reflect the amount of demand on a monthly basis. It's just supply has been so low that, demand has then artificially been constrained because of that. Had 5,000 homes been listed last year, we could have had 4,000 closings pretty easily. So
Yeah. Anyway, I've always had an issue with absorption rates when there's such a high demand for housing and a low supply.
Question.
Yeah.
Taking it down to it like a neighborhood level, can you tell me how you would, you're talking with the seller and, it's like, okay, your price should be at this point, if you're 1 out of 3 homes in the entire neighborhood, but your price should be at this point if you're 1 in 15 homes in the neighborhood. What is your strategy on that?
I always ask the buyer or the sellers to look at their home and the other actives that they're in competition with from the perspective of the buyers. If you were a buyer and you really wanted to buy right now, but you only had 3 options, would the seller's house be a good option for them compared to the other 2? Most likely, yes. But if you're a buyer who has to buy right now and there's 15 homes, what is going to make you choose this seller's house over all these others?
Right.
And so, that's where, like this, you don't have nearly as much leverage as a seller if the buyers have a lot more options. And so that's just, getting the sellers to, because obviously the sellers have an emotional investment in their house and they are more likely to value it higher than a random buyer may. So just, going through that exercise of trying to get them to put themselves in a buyer's shoes who sees their home, but also sees all the other options. And it's like,
Okay.
yeah, maybe I actually think a buyer would prefer this other home compared to yours if they're priced the same. So the only way we can get that buyer to really want yours instead is to be priced a little bit more competitively, because otherwise, yeah, this other one looks like a more attractive option for that buyer who's in a hurry.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
in
you.
the middle of that is the difficult part. If you have the nicest house, you know what to do with it, right? If you have the crappiest house, you know what to do with it. But what do you do with, if you're talking about 15 homes for sale, what do you do with the one that falls at 7? It's hard to work with that. So
Well, on that same point, like oftentimes when I take on a home, if there's homework for the sellers to do with regards to prepping the home and getting it ready. After the listing appointment, I try to get the contract signed at the listing appointment if I'm able, but then we have a date where we're actually gonna put it in the MLS and it's gonna go move forward as listing. So during that time, what I've shared, and I'm just curious how other people would do this. What I share is that we're in a range and I kind of put a price in there, a holding price, but we talk about what's actually, because we're in a seller's market, because it's an unusual market that we're in with inventory, that you actually will set where we put it in the range based on what's happening at the moment that we get ready to hit. So we come back and visit that. Does anyone else do that? And then like if there's a lot on the market, there's more on the market at that time, we may want to be more competitive and put it toward the lower end of the range. With the expectation that possibly that would even generate more interest and even a bidder's war, but no guarantee on that, or not, sort of their decision on where they want to place it. But I'm asking what others do on that. I try to get things under contract and then come back a week or two later after the house is ready to, the photo shoot and all that.
I have the perfect, well, I don't know if it's a perfect example, but the house is currently under contract with the walkthrough, and I had pulled comps before, and I was looking at I thought a good fair price was, I think it was like 230, 239, 240-ish. And then it went back, and then the sellers, it was an estate sale, so you have 3 sisters dealing with it. But they thought somebody had told them 280, and I was like, there's no way in heck. So I listed it at 257. And then we were just about to reduce the price because it had been on the market for 2 weeks and only had 3 showings. So I was just about to, in fact, I started the conversation with them that we might want to do this on the 14th day. And then I got an offer for over asking. So it's like, it just,
It's crazy.
Yeah.
so.
The other takeaway from this section that I wanted to highlight real quick related to this is the Zillow estimate that they mentioned. Because one thing that in my view, yeah, I put very little faith in Zillow estimates or any of those online algorithms, but the public is not us, and the public puts a little bit more faith in them. So even though we should not be using them as a basis for coming up with our value, we need to be aware of them. If it should not be that the first time you find out what the Zillow estimate on this house that you're sitting in is when the seller tells you, well, my Zillow says my home is worth it. You need to definitely look that up before any listing appointment you go on. You need to know what Zillow says or any of those other sites. So that way then you can mentally also be ready to explain why the number that you came up with is different than what Zillow put out there. That is being ready for that conversation, I think, is definitely a good takeaway from this video.
Do we know Do we know how Zillow, I mean, I surmise how they do it. They throw everything together and sort of divide it without any. But I don't know that for sure. Do we know how they gather those estimates? Or estimates?
They're getting smarter with it. It is advancing as is AI type of math algorithms start to get better. But they still do pretty much a geographical location. Like my house, I live on the lake, and it's not pointing out other houses that don't. It's grabbing comps that are just in the subdivision across the street, so which doesn't work. So those things are still going on with Zillow. I wanted to point out something though, that you can use it to your advantage. When you go to list your house, you have the option, one of the last screens, I think it's in Remind, it's the last screen, and Flex, I have no idea. But you can give permissions for those third parties to give price opinions or not. So when your listing ends up on Zillow, if say Zillow says that it's worth 450,000 and you're listing it at 380,000, turn that on and let that happen so that it looks like somebody's about to give a good deal. But if you know the Zillow's off by a lot and it's saying that it's worth 350 and you're listing it at 500, make sure you shut that off. Just a little bit of tech advice.
Oh.
I know that existed. That is great advice.
I didn't know
I was
that
not
at.
gonna do that.
You can turn that on and off inside of your listings.
Yeah.
So where's it at in the listings? Where?
Here, I'm going to find it right now. I
Okay,
have a good
great, thank
idea
you.
of where it is.
Yeah, I think it's the last page in Remind, Jordan, or
So-
in the Real Comp one.
Oh, okay.
So it's gonna be in the ad edit.
Yep.
I mean, this on a share screen.
Oh, you're okay.
It's,
Trying to find it too.
And Tony, we'll find it in Flex and I'll show it to you.
Okay.
Flex is your new one, Rob? Is that it? You guys know-
Yeah,
Yes.
it's an animal.
That's the name of it?
It's better than Rapatoni for sure,
Yeah.
but it's just learning something new and
Yeah.
Should be at the bottom once you open up one of your stuff.
hold on, I gotta move stuff around with all this. All right, so integrations, you
I
think,
think so, yeah.
or the internet permissions? Not-
Internet permissions, internet permissions.
All right,
AVM and vows and IDX sites.
changing.
That's
that.
what that
Right there.
means. Yeah,
Permit UMV displays, if that's what it is, okay.
I'm
that's
going
what
to-
that's what those things mean. IDX is an exchange of sites information. So you're telling an IDX site, which is Zillow, Realtor, even
Right.
other agent websites, that they cannot post their value opinions.
Okay. Wow, that's good to know.
So use it to your advantage. If Zillow
Yeah.
says if Zillow says you're giving a deal, leave it on. If Zillow says that you're selling it for too much, shut it off.
Yeah.
So Rob, I'm definitely stealing this for next week's sales meeting as why people need to be in on these conversations. We get more out of these conversations than even, the slam content itself.
Just tell the room I'm super smart.
Yes, that you are.
question.
Yes,
Can we, so Rob, when you say go in and just turn it off, so the listing is live
Mhm.
and we can go in and just turn that puppy off any minute, anytime? Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Now
Yeah.
it'll go with it takes time to update these websites. I think Zillow's every 30 minutes that they pull information from the local MLSs. So it'll take a second, but
Okay,
it'll get there.
I know my listing is overpriced right now, so I'm definitely turning it off.
yes.
All right, well, that was helpful.
Very helpful.
All right, so let's go back then to, now we're on to the pricing game. What were people's thoughts of, I'm not the type to actually, have the husband and wife and, get 3 sheets of paper and ask them,
No.
what did you think the list price should be before I did the presentation? And then what did you think the price should be after? And then what price should I list it for today? Which I don't understand the difference between the second and third there necessarily. But then, pitting the two of them against each other, if one is lower than the other and letting them battle it out to come, yeah. That's not my style. But does anybody think that they would incorporate that into a listing presentation?
I don't think I would.
No, seems kind of cheesy.
Yeah.
I think you're already addressing what they want for their house at the beginning of the presentation. You know, that was one of the questions. And then you're presenting what looks to be the value in the market today, and then you go from there.
Exactly, yeah.
Uh-huh. The only thing I actually did take as a worthwhile tidbit from this video though was the market efficiency ratio. Uh, because I'm the type that, yes, I'm gonna pull up everything in that neighborhood that has been listed in the last year. But it never occurred to me to come up with, okay, what percentage actually ended up getting to the closing table? You know, if it's, you know, eight of the homes that were listed got to the closing table, but two of them ended up, you know, being withdrawn or expired and, you know, just never ended up selling, then that's in the last year an 80% success rate for that neighborhood. So, you know, we want to make sure that your home is one of the 80% that makes it to the closing table. We don't want to be one of those that, you know, is in the 20% that ended up just being withdrawn and all that. So that's being able to have that information about their specific neighborhood and the successful closings based on the total listings in general. I think that that was a useful piece of information to have with you at a listing presentation. Anyone else on?
Well, I just feel that it might not be quite as dynamic in a deep seller's market. Because that number will not deviate, you know, but clearly in a balanced market, that would be even more valuable to.
Yeah, if the number is like 100%, or near to that, then yes, it's not helpful.
Yeah,
And it almost then convinces them to go FSBO. But if it's, you know, but that's where you should do the math and do the analysis to see, and anything, you know, 80% or lower, especially in a seller's market, you know, everybody thinks like everything's selling. If you found a house in a neighborhood where only 80% of the listings were actually getting to the closing table, that would be an important thing to point out. You know, just because it would defy expectations or should shock them a bit.
Oh, that's a good point, Jordan. Yeah.
So that's it for that one. Let's then move on to closing the appointment. So yeah, this one was the one with the handling objections. And I liked, you know, the way they laid out, okay, 4 steps. You receive the objection with confidence. You know, then begin your response with gratitude, acknowledge and validate their concern, and then ask questions to help clarify, you know, what their objection is. It's a good, you know, just 30,000 foot level of how to approach objections. But really, yeah, as you know, Kathy, you were saying early on, this doesn't teach us how to. That's a whole different class on its own. I mean, that Nicole specializes in is going through those conversations, because that is a lot of role playing. And you have the scripts to give you the first draft of how to handle the objection, but then you need to digest the script and make it your own, so that then when you're doing it, you can do so with confidence and natural ability to your style. So yeah, and then yeah, you have that objection skill set journal that you could utilize to keep track of objections. Again, I'm not the type to do that, but Kathy, it sounded like you
I am,
were.
yeah.
You find that to be a useful.
Well, just to analyze it, just to get a sense of, and I don't know that I would use it religiously forever, but I think I will use it.
Yeah.
And also that'll help me keep track of how I'm, you know, how I'm handling things.
Um, Any other thoughts on this closing the appointment? They had mentioned it's always good to leave some swag behind, some branded content like a pen or a fridge calendar. Do people have swag that they leave on their listing appointments?
I wondered what everybody else thought about that. I personally don't. Um,
Being on a team with Ruth, I can tell you that what we leave behind is a loaf of, or a baked good of some sort. We're showing up to every listing appointment with a homemade baked good. That's always been Ruth's style. That I've even adopted myself. I'll bring a loaf of bread that I just pulled out of the oven an hour earlier. Just that's part of our branding, but
Yeah.
it's yeah.
I do that a lot on my clients. I have a lot going on with my interaction post clients, once post closing. I do a lot of that kind of thing, but I've never thought about doing something like that at the actual listing appointment.
Right.
So I was curious what everybody else thought about that.
I actually kind of think that makes it more personal and them more comfortable. I never thought about that, Jordan. It's a great idea. I always thought a card was sufficient enough, for that. Just so they had all your contact information until you connect on a personal level, like I said.
What
Ruth
is
is
their Jordan, what is their reaction when you bring baked goods or when you bring something personal like that? What are people's reactions? Are they surprised? Are they delighted? Are they like, what? Why, what?
It runs the gamut. Generally speaking, it's a very positive, but there's times where I think I've picked up on cues that maybe Ruth was oblivious to, that, okay, they're being polite in receiving this. Because I mean, food is a very personal thing for some people in terms of dietary restrictions and all the different, and the stuff that Ruth brings is not healthy.
No, good stuff. I mean, yeah, the cinnamon rolls the other day were incredible.
Yeah, so for some people, it is just she's bringing a diet busting, thing to but it's worked for her, and so even when I get the sense of, okay, maybe not the right, it's a net benefit overall, and it's something that she just has a passion for.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit less awkward because what I bake is pretty neutral and not likely to be objectionable to any. Because I mean, mine is even like I showed up to one, I did not know at the time they were vegan, but I'm glad that what I showed up with was just a loaf of bread, which totally vegan. What Ruth would have brought would have been something with butter and eggs and all the stuff that they wouldn't even been able to eat. So it was kind of good she wasn't on that appointment. So yeah, I mean but again, I'm the type that you want to start with what your brand is and what your style is, and then from there, that can help you determine what is the right thing to leave behind to reinforce your brand. And so yeah, I mean, if it is going to be swag, then what is your differentiation factor and why it is that they should want to be hiring you, and then just something that is a little reminder for that's your differentiation. Um, there's
I guess my question is, how do you present it to them? You say, here, I brought you a little gift. I mean, I'm just curious because these are strangers. They know you're there to appraise their house and all. So, I mean, I think it's cool. I'm just wondering what you say to them. Here's a gift.
I mean, when I walk in, it's like, I
I'm not trying to buy your listing or anything, but here's what, I mean, how do you
No.
approach it?
I brought you a loaf of bread. It's something I do for all my appointments, just as a thank you for even just, meeting with me and letting me
Oh,
into
okay.
your home. I really appreciate, you
All right.
contacting me and letting me come visit. Here's a loaf of bread.
Okay.
It's not here's this. If you list with me, it's, yeah.
Oh, I know that. I just want.
So, but yeah, so the swag, that was part of the closing the appointment, and then handling objections, that was pretty much the entirety of that video. And so then, timing, we're pretty good. We got one more to go through, which was the follow-up after the appointment. And then, so yeah, I mean, a lot of this was based on the idea of if you don't actually list it a couple days later, but instead it's you went on a listing appointment with someone who is telling you, yeah, they're thinking of selling 6 months from now. What, this video was about having an intentional process or system in place to make sure that you keep in touch with them, and keep that line of communication open so that you remain likeliest to get the listing when they actually go to sign the contract. And yeah, as you approach it, even then trying to get them to sign a little bit early, that sort of thing. Did anyone watch this and get a takeaway from it? I have one, but I want to see what anyone else has from it.
I have to confess, I didn't get to this. I got through all of them and did some thinking, but I didn't actually get to watch this one yet. I was gonna watch it later today, so I'm not able to comment, sorry.
No, that's totally fine.
You're
Was,
saying a takeaway on the last one or just in general?
well, this last one, and then we'll go back to, just in general overall. Because I mean, like, what they had listed off is, you should update your notes in your CRM. That's a good immediate step after the appointment. Go into the CRM, leave any notes, in the database with their contact info. Just update it, and anything you remember from the meeting that you think could be useful information later. Handwriting a thank you note and mailing it out to them, and then follow up phone calls every week until they either list or tell you to stop calling. I'm not the type to be that persistent, but the one thing that they mentioned, which prompted me to realize, yeah, this is something I do or have done in the past, and I think it is if you do have someone who is planning to list month, 2 month, 3 months from now, I think the best thing you can do is set them up as a saved search. You identify the typical buyer for their home and then set up a saved search that would be as though, okay, a buyer is going to be looking in this rough price range in this school district that needs this number of bedrooms in this size house. When you list, you're going to fall into that that search criteria. But in the meantime, I'm going to be emailing you every listing that hits the market that also falls in that criteria, because these are what the buyers who are in the market right now, and they're keeping an eye on things. It's what they're seeing. So that way, then when your home hits 2 months from now, you're already going to be aware of what those buyers are seeing. So that way, then you can predict, okay, yes, this is where your home should be when you hit, because you've been watching it just along with them. Because the whole idea is when the buyers see the new listing for the first time, most of them are going to know instantly from the photos, from the stats. They're going to be, oh, that's a good price, or oh, that's overpriced, or whatever. Like, any buyer who's been on a save search for months, yeah, they get the new listings and they take a look and they make that determination, this is a good one I want to check out, or oh, that one's overpriced, I can ignore it. I'm, saying no to that one for some reason. If the sellers can truly put themselves in the buyer's shoes by you setting them up on that saved search criteria and getting those same listings that all the other buyers, that future buyer for their home is getting, I think that's a useful tactic to help educate the sellers, and then also really reaffirm or maybe offer adjustments to what the intended list price was going to be for their home. Has anybody else ever done that before?
I've not done that.
Because
I've not done that. I talk about the fact that when we get ready to put it on, to analyze the market and so on and so forth, and what their product looks like with other products, but that's a great idea.
Mhm.
and because I mean, I don't even know if it's in my save or auto emails from last year, but,
Keeping them informed and educating them and
Well, I've shown a potential seller. She couldn't decide, so it was, I mean, I think 5 or 6 months went by. So then I sent her, now here's the value of your home now. It was here and we were gonna list it here. Now it's here. So I'll get the listing. I am gonna get, oh, well, I hope to get the listing, but she passed away and that's, you know, I think it's a friend of a friend kind of thing, but I thought that was, you know, or look, your next door neighbor just sold their house and this is what they got kind of thing. Yeah, keeping them posted on stuff.
yeah, and so here's an example, that I did, where you can just see that I had set it up, you know, listings in competition with your family home. I set up this save search, you know, like 2 months before we listed, and then I just, you know, let the search continue, you know, even while we were listed at that point. So that way, yeah, they really got the true experience from the buyer side of, you know, okay, keeping an eye on the market as though you're a buyer. So that way then you have that much more knowledge and can look at your family home, you know, through the lens of that buyer. So that was something that I thought, you know, it wasn't exactly what they had in the SLAM video. What they said was set it up so they automatically receive value services, almost like the Zillow estimates or whatever, just or market updates, setting them up to just receive automated market reports, basically. I think it's much more useful to set them up
Yeah.
to receive
Yeah.
emails with
Personally.
listings they're going to be in competition with.
so what do you use though? Do you use whatever it is, whatever criteria you use to establish their price initially? Is that what you do? Or do you use school district? Or do you use, I mean, how broad or how narrow are those searches?
I mean, I try to view it as, okay, I mean, I often deal with buyers who, yeah, what is their criteria? My buyers usually they know what school district, but they're not so hyper focused on only one neighborhood. They want the general school district, the general, you know, they can afford up to this amount, you know, they need at least 3 bedrooms, they need at least this size. And so then you set, you know, a pretty typical search criteria that when this future listing hits, it's going to be captured by the criteria. And in the meantime, that criteria is going to be capturing all the other stuff that I would include as the active comps on a market analysis. Because yeah, what's important is, you know, when you do the market analysis and you include the active comps, yeah, you're going to see the pending comps as well and the sold comps. But this kind of gives them a real time continual storytelling of the market. It's a much more dynamic market analysis rather than a snapshot. It's an ongoing. And so they can keep an eye. And yeah, they see that, you know, this listing hit, you know, on the 15th. And so then when you go to list it on the 25th, and they see that that home on the 15th is already pending, they can think to themselves, yeah, when I saw that listing, I thought that was a really good listing. It's not surprising it's already pending 10 days later. You know, rather than if you just show up on the 25th and they see it as a pending, that's the first time they're coming across it. They had no expectation about it or anything like that. It's letting them experience the market in a true way that the buyers are experiencing it. And that's beneficial to them as sellers.
I'm just curious, one more quick question is do you include like a broad square footage on that, on your criteria?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Well,
So
thank
Sherry, did you want to bring up anything else from like the total section?
I was just gonna say from the very beginning, one of the things that grabbed a hold of me was to never shortcut your referrals, because we tend to do that. We tend to think we're secured in that, and it was really a good source of information to remind us that we need to treat it like any new client.
Very much so, yeah. Yeah, can't take them for granted just because, you know, a friend gave them your number.
Well, most of it seems like for me anyways, most of my business comes that way through a referral from someone.
Yes. Any other last thoughts on this section? This recording went a little bit longer than the previous one, but it was also a larger section with more videos. Anything else?
Good
Or-
stuff.
All right. Well, I guess we can wrap it up there. And so thank you all for attending this week. Again, I appreciate it. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, have a good weekend.